Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a lot to talk about. Starting off with Porzingis and the Celtics absolutely killing the Dallas Mavericks in Game 1 of the finals, something that I was not expecting that kind of dominance out of them, at least right away. They come in and show why they cruised through the playoffs and why they were so heavily favored in every series that they've played. We're also going to talk about some potential NBA expansion. We're going to do some Stanley Cup Finals predictions as that series begins on Saturday. So we're going to do the official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network Stanley Cup predictions. And then we're going to move into some baseball at the end of the show, do our Friday power rankings, and then we are going to end the show talking about the Yankees and Garrett Cole's situation. But we're going to start off our show today breaking down Game 1 of the NBA Finals. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Friday afternoon here. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show today with the Celtics rout of the Mavericks. They absolutely demolished them on every single aspect of the game, and Kristaps Porzingis was a huge part of that. Obviously, his first game since the first round of the playoffs when he got hurt against the Heat. He's been out for a while. He comes in, he's limited minutes, he comes off the bench. Al Horford still starts the game, and really everybody on the Celtics played a great game, but having Porzingis out there as a true mismatch against anybody that the Mavericks can throw onto him was the big story of this game, right? Kristaps Porzingis comes out there, and when you have a big guarding him, he's going to use his handles and shoot from deep, get around them, get to the rim. And when you have someone smaller on him, he can just post them up, get down low, and it's a mismatch. You know, he's called the unicorn for a reason. It's special the things he can do, his size, his skill, that combination. And it's just a shame that he can't stay healthy more often. He goes out and he dominates in 20 minutes of game. He scores 20 points, 3 blocks as well. His effort on the defensive end was huge. Him and Jaylen Brown came up with huge stops down the stretch in that second half. The Celtics dominated for basically this entire game, except for a stretch in the third quarter when the Mavericks were able to cut the lead down from what was a 30-point deficit a little ways into the second quarter, right before the first half. They were able to cut it down to an 8-point lead. So the Mavericks had something working for at least a small portion of this game. You know, Luka was making his shots. Kyrie kind of struggled a little bit from the field in this game. And I don't want to put all the blame on him for it, because there were a lot of things that just kind of went wrong for the Mavericks in this game. You know, Kyrie wasn't super efficient. Luka, who had himself a solid game, wasn't great. He only has 2 assists in this entire game. The Mavericks as a whole only have 9 assists all game long, and the Mavericks are a team that like to share the ball like to pass it around, they they weren't able to get anything done. Obviously, it doesn't help when Kyrie goes for 6 for 19 from the field, 0 for 5 from three. Their 3-point shooting was abysmal, 25% overall. But when you're playing against a Celtics team, and the Celtics defense was a huge part of that as well. They were really up aggressive in your face. They had a lot of steals, forced a lot of turnovers. I mean, it was just a very altogether great game by the Boston Celtics. Everything they did better than the Mavericks. Shooting, defense, passing, everything. You can look at basically any metric, uh, and the Celtics were just better. And it's not something that the Mavericks can't come back from. And I know when you watch Game One and what was supposed to be an exciting, close series, and the Celtics come out and remind everybody why they are a juggernaut of a team, it's a little bit hard to sit here and say, "Hey, the Mavericks have a shot." Right? It's completely understandable to overreact here. And I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the Mavericks might get gentlemen swept, they might get swept, they don't really stand a chance." And my mindset after watching that game is the same. I mean, it's scary, but you have to look at the broader picture. Luka is going to play better than that. They're going to start moving the ball around. The Celtics aren't going to shoot, uh, you know, 40% from three every single game. I know they are a very good 3-point shooting team, but the the Mavericks are going to shoot better on their own. Them as a team, they struggled shooting from three, like we said, only 25%. That's not the kind of shooting that they expect to get from a team with Luka Doncic, with Kyrie Irving, with some solid 3-point threats. Derek Lively only had 2 points in this game coming off the bench, and he didn't score until the fourth quarter. It was not the game that you want to have at one of your important defensive pieces. So there were a lot of things that kind of went wrong for the Dallas Mavericks. And everything seemingly went right for the Celtics, aside from that one stretch where the Mavericks were able to cut it down to 8 points in that third quarter. This game was just kind of brutal. There was a stretch at the end of the first that kind of took the game away. It was close, and then the Celtics went on like a 10-0 run or something like that to expand the lead to 15 points. And at that point, the game was obviously hindsight. You say the game is over, but the game was kind of over at that point. They were just not missing their shots. It's it was just a great overall game by the Celtics, really. And I don't expect the Mavericks to get outplayed like that every single night of these playoffs. Game two is on Sunday, so we'll see how they're able to rebound. But you know, like I said, there were signs of life out of the Mavericks. There were signs of life that this not going to be a 30-point blowout every single game. It's not going to be a unfair series because they were able to get it close. They were able to go on runs of their own, and basketball is a game of runs. They just need to hit one where the Celtics aren't, on fire the entire game. And there will be a game that happens. The Celtics have their off games. That we saw it happen against the Heat. We saw it happen against the Cavaliers. We saw this happen in the route to in route to the playoffs. Through the playoffs, I should say. These Celtics aren't immortal. They aren't unbeatable. It's going to be tough. You need to play a good game. You need to play your best game against them because they go 6, 7, 8 deep on stars. We were talking. It was saying, you take a look at the top 5 players on the floor, aside from Irving and Luka. There's nobody that you take on that Mavericks roster over the Celtics. You don't take anybody else over the Celtics starting 5. You know, you might you might when you get to the bench start to take some more players from the Mavericks, but it's Kyrie and it's Luka against basically the entire starting 5 for the Boston Celtics. Those are the star players in this series. So it's a uphill battle for them, definitely. They need to be on their best basketball behavior. They need to be playing their best basketball that they can be in order to win this series. It's not impossible, and I think they can still make it a fight. Obviously, going and playing in Boston, a place where Boston only lost 4 times in the regular season, is not an easy thing to do. Especially whenever Kyrie is touching the ball, he's getting boos thrown at him. Now, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but there were still audible boos every time he was touching the ball, and that can't be easy to deal with. I do think that the Mavericks will bounce back. I don't know if they'll take Game 2, but I definitely think Game 2 will be closer. I expect them to definitely be better shooting from 3. You can't win a game against the Celtics shooting 25% from 3, and I think that was the real killer. The Celtics defense was awesome, but I think the real killer in this game was the Mavericks just bad shooting luck, bad shooting touch. And, you're going to have your bad nights where it seems like there's a lid on the basket. So it's not something to overreact to too much. I expect this series will still be good. Celtics, I think, will still win this series, but I think that the rest of these games shouldn't be blowouts. And that's not to say they can't be, but I just have a feeling that the rest of these games are going to be close. When you have the best player in the series in Luka, it's not going to be blowouts every single time. You can definitely steal 1 or 2 games from this team like the Celtics are. And it's going to be tougher because Porzingis is going to start to get more minutes. He was on a minutes restriction. He was dominating against them. But I do believe in this Mavericks team, the ability to at least send this series to 6. So we'll see what happens in Game 2. But we are going to continue our NBA coverage in our next segment. There were talks of expanding the NBA from Adam Silver in his press conference before the Game 1. So we'll talk about his comments, everything he said, and where they might expand to. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world. Give me a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Same it. The top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced. All this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it. The news it fits. I'm losing shit. A stupid myth. You choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the Celtics' absolute domination rout of the Dallas Mavericks in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, taking that game 107-89. In this segment, we're going to finish up our NBA coverage. We're going to talk a little bit about some comments made by Adam Silver before the game, talking about possible NBA expansion. He's looking at adding 2 new teams. He talked a little bit about details, why they hadn't done it yet, and where they might go. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all you would like to ask me, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little more NBA conversation here. Adam Silver does his yearly press conference before the finals, and this year he said something interesting. Obviously, the NBA has been talking about expansion. Expansion has been proposed in the NBA for quite some time. People are thinking, oh, the talent pool is just starting to get stacked. We have too many stacked teams. Obviously, we're just talking about the Celtics having five great players on one team. So the talent pool is ready to expand, and that should help even out teams a little more, add a little more craziness to the NBA in a league that's already, for a league that was struggling with lack of parity back just 5, 6 years ago, is full of parity now. We've had a different champion about 3 or 4 years in a row now, so that should add more excitement to the game, make regular season games matter a little more, maybe. So we will see what happens there. But the proposal is two new franchises, and first team, first city that obviously gets thrown out there is Seattle. Kelsey says maybe a team in Vancouver. That is definitely something that's a possibility. We obviously saw the Grizzlies now in Memphis. They previously were up there in Vancouver. There's a chance that they go back there. I think because they were talking about international markets, staying out of the United States. I think they're definitely going to add a team up in the Northwest region, whether that be Vancouver or Seattle. I'm not sure. Obviously, both of those cities used to have teams. Vancouver used to have the Grizzlies, and the Seattle used to have the Supersonics. Supersonics have moved to Oklahoma City, so I expect one of those two cities to get a team, at least one of them. But there was that interesting comment that was made by Adam Silver that said they were looking at expanding outside of the United States. And in our production meeting today, we were talking a little bit about it. Europe is something that seems a little impossible to do right now, but it's something that a lot of American sports leagues are trying to expand out into. You talk about the NFL expanding their games into into international. They play Germany and London and places like that. Hickory Ridge, Arkansas. That's probably a name that's in there. I think that should be at the top of the list, definitely. Uh, maybe another team in the Midwest. I think if they're going to international markets, though, a place that would be really nice to have is Mexico City. And, they were talking about international markets. You talk about travel when you're talking international. They're looking to expand. Obviously, North America makes a lot of sense because it's easy to do travel. Mexico City's a huge city down there. They've got a lot of sports fans. There's been talk of a baseball team going there, but a basketball team would make just as much sense. Plenty of Latin American basketball players, and you get international, more countries involved in the NBA other than just the U.S. and Canada, and it's not impossible to do travel, and that's really the issue with the U.S. being so far away from everything. As much as these sports leagues want to expand internationally to other continents, the logistics of that are almost impossible. And, if you're putting a team in Germany, you're putting a team in London, that's a 6-hour flight to New York, not even mentioning flying to LA. It's just not something that's easy to do. It's not easy to throw a team out there just kind of on an island so far away from everybody. Maybe you throw one in Puerto Rico. Maybe you throw one in an island that's close to the U.S. Somewhere around there. But there's lots of options. I think they're going to put one more in the U.S. Like we were talking about before. Northwest region is probably going to get one, either Seattle or Vancouver. My best guess is Seattle. Seattle has been pushing for an NBA team for a very, very long time. They have the facilities, they have people that are ready to buy in, but that is something that I expect to get one of the two teams. The other name that I actually don't think will get in there is Vegas. We talked about a lot of teams going to Vegas recently. The Raiders moved there. The Golden Knights moved there. The Oakland Athletics are moving there now. And now with all it's missing is a basketball team, and that's a big draw for us, for a city, for a team. Going to Vegas. But I don't think the NBA wants to go to Vegas yet. I have a feeling they don't want to put an expansion team in Vegas. And maybe my radar is completely off on this one. Maybe I'm just ducking the possibility of another team going to Vegas because it is a hot market for sports franchises right now. But I just have this feeling that Vegas is not going to get another sports team, especially since Adam Silver specifically was talking about, you know, expanding out of the country. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. They'd have to add a bunch more talent, which there is plenty around the world, around the league. Uh, and there's plenty of people that are looking at getting into the NBA. The NBA is growing a lot right now, and this is the time to do it. They've got to do it soon, when they can add it in cleanly. They're in the midst of changing over TV deals. They're in the midst of they just signed a new CBA that kicks in next summer, I believe. So there's lots of different aspects to expanding. It's not just, oh, it's a good idea to expand. Uh, I might go to Vegas. Vegas sounds fun. Maybe I'll go out there soon. But the there's a lot to go into expanding. It's not something that they can do easily. Yeah, the look, Kelsey says NFL plays in Mexico and the UK all the time, and to that point, the difference between the NFL and the NBA when it comes to scheduling is the NFL plays one game a week, right? In the NBA, you get one, maybe two off days in a week, and you need time to adjust. If you are flying to Europe, you have to adjust to the time zone. You play one game there, and then you have a game the next day in New Orleans, in LA. That's not an easy thing to schedule. It's a lot easier in the NFL because they have the time in between their games to do it. And a lot of times when they do the international games out there in London, in Germany, they have a bye week right after to give the players more time with the travel, with the scheduling. So it works a little bit better and cleaner when we're talking about the NFL than it would in the NBA. But there is a lot to talk about. It seems like NBA expansion is coming soon. I'm a huge proponent of it. I think this league needs to expand. I mean, this league is overflowing with talent. There's talent all over the world. More players getting an opportunity in the NBA is always a great thing. And that also will cut down on scoring. The last time that the league expanded, there was a huge drop in scoring. We've talked about how there's an offensive problem in the NBA. Defense is becoming really hard. Defense is becoming really hard. It'll spread out talent. It'll decrease scoring. Make the scoring go down a little more to where it kind of feels like a normal basketball game rather than a, you know, 130 to 150 kind of basketball game. But in our next segment, we are going to move out of the world of basketball. We are going to move into the world of hockey. The Stanley Cup Finals begin tomorrow. So we're going to do an official prediction for the Stanley Cup Finals, break down everything that's going into that. So stick around for that. We will be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the possible expansion of the National Basketball Association, the NBA. Adam Silver was talking about it before Game 1 of the NBA Finals that took place last night. We also broke down that game in the first segment, where the Celtics absolutely dominated them behind the triumphant return of Kristaps Porzingis. In this segment, though, we are going to move out of the world of basketball, move into the world of ice hockey as the Stanley Cup Finals begin tomorrow. So we're going to do our official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network prediction for the Stanley Cup Finals. We're going to break down everything that's going into the game, the history, everything surrounding that. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. If you go there and leave a tip or donation, your message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world that is watching to see. Appreciate everybody for anything they give. We appreciate all of you for sticking around and talking some sports. If you do have a comment, a question, anything at all, go ahead and throw that in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the Stanley Cup Finals predictions. It's finally here. The race for the most coveted trophy here in the world of sports, the Stanley Cup, Lord Stanley, wonderful trophy. But we have teams that have been waiting forever to get it. The Oilers, first time they've made the final since 2006. A franchise that is historically great. They had Wayne Gretzky on them. They won 4 in the 80s. They won another, I believe, in 90. It's been a long cup drought for them. There hasn't been a cup in Canada for almost 20 years. It's been a very, very long time since the cup stayed up north. On the other hand, the Florida Panthers, they are returning to the Stanley Cup Finals for the second year in a row. Sergei Bobrovsky has powered them here. It should be a really fun series, and this is the headlines of this series are really interesting. Obviously, for the Florida Panthers, it was, you know, they made it back. It's been a lot of hockey played for them. They've come in as favorites this time. They came in as huge underdogs in the last series, and really underdogs the whole playoffs. But they've arrived. Sergei Bobrovsky is having himself an incredible playoff run. 2.2 goals allowed per game is insane. His save percentage is unreal, especially at that last series against the Rangers. He was lights out, let up 2 or less goals in each of the last 3 games of that series to close it out. He was incredible. That whole team has been playing incredible. They play incredibly physical, and it's a tough style of hockey to adapt to. The Oilers, on the other hand, kind of play the exact opposite. You have Connor McDavid, not arguably, the best player the best hockey player in the world right now, leading the charge. Next to him, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, both guys that can score 50 goals in a season. Evander Kane has the ability later in those further lines down. This Oilers team is stacked offensively. Stuart Skinner is quietly having a solid postseason. You talk about not really anything too spectacular. 2-5 goals against, which is really good, but it doesn't tell the whole story with him. He hasn't started every single game. He got benched for a game or two against the Vancouver Canucks in the Western semis. So there's a lot going into this series. The key for really both of these teams, I think, is going to be the power play. Heading into this series, and we've talked a little bit about this before, but heading into this series, the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers have been the 2 best teams at killing the penalties in this league. In this entire playoffs, right? Edmonton has killed 26 power play opportunities in a row. That is an insane run. The Florida Panthers had the second best penalty kill in these playoffs, And I mean, it's scary to think how good these players, these guys are at killing the penalties. They also do a really good job, excuse me, of staying out of the box. And special teams is going to be a huge factor. Edmonton has scored on 37% of their power plays, and Florida hasn't quite been as effective, but they've gotten a lot more power plays than Edmonton has. The one thing that Florida has going for them is the fact that, they're so physical. And the Oilers are a team that aren't that physical. We kind of saw it hit them in the beginning of the Dallas series. Dallas came out and was a little physical, and they said they weren't ready for it. If they thought Dallas was physical, I don't know how they're going to respond to Florida. Uh, Florida is the most physical team in this playoffs. They went up against a Rangers team that was hitting the living daylights out of everybody, and they surprised even the Rangers with their physicality. It was one of those things I expected them to be able to match physically, and they were able to adjust and match a little bit down the stretch. But the Florida Panthers came out the gate, and they came out of the gate swinging. And if they're going to do that to the Oilers, which I fully expect them to do, that kind of has been their whole personality heading into this Stanley Cup final series, it's going to be tough for the Oilers to take game one. The Oilers have, really battened down the hatch defensively, especially in game 6 against the Dallas Stars. Their offense wasn't working. They got dominated the entire time. They couldn't get anything really after the first period. And yet they only gave up one goal. They were able to take away a lot of scoring opportunities from the Dallas Stars. They were able to take away a lot of scoring chances, great looks at the net. They gave up 36 shots, but 36 bad shots are a lot better than 10 good shots, and that's why they were able to win that game. They don't need to dominate you on offense to win, because they will hit their good opportunities. You saw them get both of those in the first period. Jokas asks, who is the LeBron James of hockey? That is Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky is the LeBron James of hockey. Wayne Gretzky is a goat among goats. I don't have his stats up here right now, but I highly encourage you to go and take a look at some of the numbers he put up. It's ridiculous. I believe in his first 7 seasons, he won like 6 MVPs or something, which is insane. And he has records that 99% of them are never gonna be broken. He was just a kind of a cheat code at hockey. Wayne Gretzky was. He was on the Oilers. He led them to 4 straight Stanley Cups back in the '80s as well. So he's the great one, and he might even be the greatest athlete of all time. Honestly, goat amongst goats. He has that kind of status. So I do highly encourage you go take a look at some of his numbers. But for this series, when I'm taking a look at it, I take a look at a couple things. First of all, the physicality of Florida is going to, in my opinion, have them start strong. And I don't know if the Oilers are going to be ready for it. Now, they've had about a week to prepare for the Florida Panthers, but it's not something you can prepare for, right? Physicality isn't something that you can prepare for. It's just you have to be ready to take it when it's there, and you have to be ready to dish it back. And the Oilers haven't really been a super physical team this whole playoffs. They more beat you with skill and finesse. But I think the Panthers are going to take game 1. And I think Sergei Bobrovsky in net is going to be able to steal a game or two from the Oilers, regardless of how good Connor McDavid is. And Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey. He deserves a Stanley Cup. I feel like this might be kind of a nightmare matchup for the Oilers. Unfortunately, just they don't match up very well when you have Sergei Bobrovsky coming in there. Being a brick wall, it's going to be really tough to score on him. And the Florida offense is no slouch either. So I'm very excited to see how this series goes. I am taking the Panthers in 6 games, but I do think that this is going to be a fun, tightly contested series, and it's going to get Connor McDavid's name more in the spotlight. Stanley Cup Finals get that going for people. But anyway, in our next segment, we are going to move into some baseball talk. It's Friday. We're going to do some power rankings. We're going to talk a little bit about the Yankees getting Garrett Cole back. So stick around for that. We will be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just did our official prediction for the Stanley Cup playoffs that begin on Saturday. I had the Florida Panthers winning that in 6. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We also talked about the NBA. We talked about Game 1 between the Celtics and the Mavericks. The Celtics absolutely dominating them. Not very close at all. They won in almost every single category. Their defense was very impressive to me. Their shot making was great. The Mavericks have an uphill battle to fight if they want to take this series. And we talked about the possibility of the NBA expanding into a couple new places this off season. But we are going to move into some baseball talk just now. We're going to move into some MLB power rankings. It's Friday. It's been a week since we last did it. Couple shakeups in the MLB today, but before we get to that, remember, if you like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question, if you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But we're going to get right into some MLB power rankings here. It's been a week since we did it. These are the power rankings. Power rankings for June 7th. Obviously, at the bottom, there aren't too many changes. The White Sox have still been the worst team in baseball. They have a couple pieces they might be able to move at the trade deadline. Luis Robert being one of them. He should fetch a huge price for them, helping them get a big haul, helping them get through their rebuild that they probably should have started a couple years ago. At 29, I still have the Marlins. Injuries have really killed them. The injuries have really killed them this season. They obviously were a playoff team last year. They played a little bit above where they should be. Their offense, which already was a weakness, has completely disappeared. They already traded away Luis Arias to the Padres. So it's not looking too good for the Marlins the rest of the way. 29 the Rockies, or 28 the Rockies, excuse me. Again, the bottom hasn't changed too much. 28 the Rockies, 27 the Angels, 26 the Athletics. The Athletics at least have one of the most exciting closers in baseball in Mason Miller. I'm curious to see what they do with him at the deadline, right? They have a couple different options. They can hold on to him and kind of build a bullpen around that, having an elite closer, or they can trade him to a contender. A team like the Orioles could really use Mason Miller. I don't know how much they'd be willing to give up from that stacked farm system for him. But if the Orioles are able to swing a trade for Mason Miller, that could immediately vault them even higher than they already are. I have them up at 3 there at the top. But a young team that really's main weakness is they don't have an elite closer, and Craig Kimbrell isn't that elite closer anymore. So they need to go out and get a guy, and maybe we'll see them go and get Mason Miller there at the deadline. Uh, at 25, I have my Washington Nationals. They've been on a slump recently. They lost Trevor Williams, who, coming into the season, if I said that, wouldn't be a big deal, but he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. They're not expected to be good, but they got my hopes up a little bit at the beginning of May when they went on their little run. The Mets just beat them in a series. The Mets have been bad, but I had to move them up ahead of the Nationals for this one. And the Pirates at 23, I have them there. Again, Paul Skeens, that effect. They're playing with a little more confidence now. They're definitely starting to separate themselves from like that bottom tier of teams. I guess that second to bottom tier of teams with like the Nationals and the Mets. They're still in there though. The Blue Jays have been bad, and I'm excited to see what they do at the deadline. Are they going to trade Bo Bichette, or are they going to move off of Vlad Guerrero? I don't think they'll move off of him, but I'm curious to see if they do move off of Bo Bichette, because this experiment, they made that big trade last offseason for Dalton Varsho, and it kind of backfired, and they haven't been the same since 2021. The Reds at 21, also a similar situation to the Blue Jays. Their young guys just haven't quite been there, and I think they'll turn it around soon. I was high on the Reds this season, so it hurts to have them this low, but they have not been good. Rays at 20, again, another situation where they have some talent, they just haven't been able to put it together. Similar to the Blue Jays, they're just a little bit better. They have some pitching there. The Giants at 19, I cannot figure out the Giants. Last week, I had them jump 10 spots. This week, I have them dropping 7. They had just gone on a huge winning streak. I believe it got up to 12 games. Now they lose 6 in a row. Their big offseason acquisition, or one of them, Blake Snell, comes back off the IL after starting 3 games, not being great, and gets hurt again after 3 more not great starts. The Giants just kind of are in a constant we're good, then we're bad, then we're good again kind of run, and I can't figure out where the Giants should be. The Cardinals, on the other hand, have been a very hot team in baseball. They started to hit again, and a big loss. They lost Contreras, and that's been a big loss for them, but they've been able to get the bats going as summer starts to heat up. Their pitching's been a little bit better. So they're continuing to itch up these rankings. The Diamondbacks I have just ahead of them. I'm just higher on them as a whole. Corbin Carroll has been struggling. He's had himself a little bit of a sophomore slump, but I do believe in that team. I think that team is. I mean, they were just in the World Series, so I got to throw them up here in the top half. The Tigers have been good. Same thing with the Astros. Both of them continue to climb up the rankings. The Tigers started hot, got a little slow stretch, and then ever since then they've been slowly climbing their way back up. Same thing with the Astros. They started off slow. They're starting to get better. Pitching is starting to get healthier. Their bats are starting to hit again. So we'll see how it is. The Red Sox are so average. No matter what they do, they're going to be average. I have them there at 14. Cubs and Rangers are a threat in the postseason, but they just have these limitations that seemingly are holding them back. The Cubs just can't stay consistent, and the Rangers, they don't have their pitching yet. Padres are surprisingly good this season. I have them at 11. They started off lower. I think my first power rankings had them down at 23, but that Luis Arias trade really paid dividends for them. He's been able to get on base and be a huge part of what they've done. I have the Royals at 10. They moved down 1 spot so that the Twins could move up 1. The Twins got Royce Lewis back, and that's going to be huge for them. If they can get Byron Buxton back, the rest of that lineup healthy, they're going to continue to mash the way they have. The Mariners at 8, they have one of the best starting rotations in baseball, and that's been keeping them afloat. It's really the same situation with the Braves. After losing Ronald Acuna, that rotation has kept them afloat. I moved them down because Chris Sale did get hit pretty badly against the Oakland Athletics in his last start, but it's nothing to really be worried about. Brewers and Guardians have just been consistently good. The Guardians, I don't quite understand. They got their offense going again, and Emmanuel Clase has been world class, but their starting pitching hasn't been great. It's just been good enough. And really, it's the similar thing with the Brewers. The Brewers have dealt with some injuries, but they've been able to get through it. Kelsey asked, did I pick a World Series matchup? I did. I don't remember what it is. Can do one right now. Why not? I think it's definitely just looking at what it is. It's Yankees Dodgers. I think I had Braves Orioles at the beginning of the season, but Yankees Dodgers is what it seems like. And speaking of the Dodgers, the Yankees play the Dodgers this in a series that starts tonight. We're going to talk all about the Yankees in our 5th segment here. But breaking down the top 4, the Dodgers fall 2-4. Nothing that they've done. They lost a series to the Pirates. The Pirates just seem to have their number for some reason. The Pirates seem to beat them no matter how bad the Pirates are, and I don't understand it. I'm not worried about the Dodgers. The Orioles I have up at 3. MVP candidates, pitching, they're the whole thing. I talked about them maybe trading for a closer. That's the only thing they need. And the Phillies drop 1 just because the Yankees have been so good. And we'll talk a little more about the Yankees. We'll talk a little more about the Yankees in our next segment, but they've just been so good. Kelsey asks, do you think it would be fun to have a garbage series between the worst 2 teams in the league? Absolutely. I think it would be awesome if they did that for draft picks. I think every league should do something like that to really it doesn't stop tanking everywhere, but it does kind of incentivize not being unable to win baseball games or unable to win ball games. So I think that's something they should absolutely look at. But we will talk more about the Yankees and the Dodgers and everything going on with the Yankees in the next segment, actually, because the Yankees have a lot of news. Juan Soto got hurt. He had his MRI. We'll talk about the results of that. Garrett Cole is supposedly coming back soon, joining a rotation that is already stacked. And then we'll do a little preview of the Dodgers Yankees series, which might be potentially a World Series matchup at the end of the year. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished our Friday Power Rankings for the MLB. We're going to finish off our show today talking a little bit about the number 1 team in those rankings, the New York Yankees. If you are just tuning in, we also finished talking about the Stanley Cup Finals. We did our official predictions. I had the Florida Panthers in 6 games. That starts on Saturday. We talked about game one of the NBA Finals, and we talked about the potential for the NBA to expand in the next couple of seasons and where they might go. Before we get into our Yankees discussion, though, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all, go ahead and leave that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you for sticking around and talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to talk about some Yankees baseball today. Garrett Cole returning to the Yankees soon. They have a big series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Potential World Series matchup here. Juan Soto has an MRI. We'll start with that because that news came out right before our show started here. Juan Soto has had a forearm screen. He's expected to be fine. No IL stint. I'm not sure if he's playing tonight or not, but he's not expected to go onto the injured list. So that is good news for the Yankees for Juan Soto. Juan Soto, who is in the midst of an MVP race against really his own teammate right now, which is kind of crazy to say. The Yankees have been that good, and Aaron Judge just had a historic month in May. So that Yankees team is scary. Not to mention that pitching staff that has been lights out. By ERA, it's been the best pitching staff in the majors, and they're going to get potentially the best pitcher in the entirety of the MLB back relatively soon. Garrett Cole made his first rehab start, and he said everything felt good. He needs just a little more time. He hasn't pitched at all this season. He got hurt right before the season. An issue that I thought would kind of sink the Yankee season. They obviously had the bats, but I was really worried about their pitching. They've had guys step up. Luis Gil had stepped up and had a sub-2 ERA, which is insane nowadays in the era of the long ball. 3 true outcome. Lots of runs being scored around the league. The Yankees pitching staff has been dominant. And adding Garrett Cole back in there, I don't even want to think about what they could do. Now, I'm not sure if all of the Yankees starters can keep this up all season long, but they don't really need to. Garrett Cole comes back. I think they said 2 more rehab starts is the target, so he should be back by the end of June. The Yankees have the best record in baseball without Garrett Cole. They're number 1 in my power rankings. They're number 1 in a lot of people's power rankings. They have 2 of the top 3 MVP candidates in the AL. It's scary. It's scary how good of a team that is. And they can still add at the deadline. I'm not sure what they will add or if they will add, but this is a team that might continue to get better as the season goes on. They're getting more reinforcements to come in, which is kind of the opposite of what's going on. Obviously, this series between the Dodgers and the Yankees kick off tonight. Potential World Series matchup. It should be a lot of fun. Juan Soto might be out. I think Kelsey says I think he's out tonight. I think you're right. I haven't seen the lineups yet though. But still, this Yankees lineup is nothing to be messed with Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, I just said, had a historic month of May, kind of getting the spotlight back on him after a little bit of a struggle to start the season. It's going to be a huge game. You have 2 of the best teams in all of baseball going up against each other. Soto, Ohtani, powerhouses. You have some great pitching matchups. I don't think either of these managers really make too big of a difference. But it should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see how Shohei Ohtani continues to play, and watching Shohei Ohtani every single day is a treat because he's just a special baseball player. But I'm very, very excited for this series. I think a 3-game series here. I'm I'm going to take the Dodgers to win this series, 2-1. No, it's not super important, but regular season, it obviously goes a little bit towards it goes a little bit towards, potential playoff matchup. You get your first real look at each other, and these are two of the best teams in baseball. A premier matchup. It should be a lot of fun on Apple TV. So very excited to watch this game tonight. That is the big game of the night without any playoffs going on. Very very excited. NBA Finals Game 2 is on Sunday though. So that is the next big postseason game. For Game 1 of the NHL Finals is on Saturday. We have lots. There's lots going on in the world of sports this weekend. The U.S. beat Pakistan in cricket. I don't have enough to talk about for a whole segment for that, but that's one of the biggest upsets of all time in cricket. That's crazy. Pakistan's huge in cricket, so U.S. beating them is awesome. Keep an eye out on the World Cup over there. But World College Baseball World Series is heating up. Lots of events going on around the world of sports. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll be back here same time, same place on Monday to talk over all the craziness in the world of sports that happened over the weekend. I will see you then. Bye bye.
Let's go.